Rotary is about fun. Yeah, Rotary is about fun, so if it's not fun, it isn't Rotary. My name is Simon Bota. I'm a past president of the Rotary Club of Nkwazi. I'm currently projects director. I'm the guest speaker for today. I've been asked to talk about projects. What I'm going to do first of all is just tell you a bit about myself and why I joined Rotary, because there are a number of prospective Rotarians in our midst. And this is a new Rotary Club. Then I'll proceed to talk about how to apply for Rotary grants. And then after that, I'll talk about the grants that we are currently running as the Rotary Club of Nkwazi. Please stop me and ask me questions if you want. Just a bit about myself. My work life. I have only worked for 2 institutions in my life. I worked for Barclays Bank Zambia PLC for 23 years. I joined at the bottom, worked myself up to the top. And then I left and decided to join Multi-Choice Zambia, and I was CEO there for 7 years. And I left in 2015, sorry. I left in 2015. My family was in the US, so I had to go and stay with my family in the US for a while, and we all came back last year in March. So now I'm a peasant farmer, just like Kaunda after he left politics, became a peasant farmer. I'm a peasant farmer. Why did I join Rotary? I joined Rotary in 2002. Your speaker last week was past President Helen, and I joined Rotary when she was president. I joined the Rotary Club of Nkwazi when she was president, and we used to meet in this same hotel. It didn't have this upstairs fancy rooms in those days. We used to meet downstairs next to the dining room, and that's the time I joined Rotary. One of the reasons why I joined Rotary is in my Barclays career. Like I mentioned, I actually started working when I was 19. It was a bit early. I went to UNZA. I failed. My guest here is a very good friend of mine. We're business partners, and we were at school together. He was at Monze. I was in Mazabuka. But we were together in first year. I failed. I dropped out, so I went and joined Barclays. And I'd been with Barclays from 1985 until 2009 when I decided to leave. Wow. Yeah, so I joined at the bottom, like I said. But luckily for me, I was rising at some point in my career. And in my job at the time, I was what we would call now a back office person. I was in operations, in banking operations. And banking operations is not customer facing, it's back office. So I found that the more senior I became, the more of an introvert I became. So I didn't, it was home, office, home, office, home, office, and I thought there's something wrong here. I'm doing well, and I'm feeling good about it, but I'm not meeting anybody new. It's the same old folks I'm meeting, my friends, people at the office, and so on. So, and then I felt I was getting lucky, and I was blessed with a bit of wealth at the time, and I needed to give something back to the community. But I wanted to give it back in a structured way. I wanted to make sure that the money that, if I had a bit of extra money, the money that I was giving was going to go to the intended beneficiaries. Not guesswork. Not when you stop at the traffic lights, you're giving a street kid, okay? Those kind of things really bother me. So one of my workmates is a past district governor now. Started when we were both in Kitwe. I was regional operations manager for Barclays then in Kitwe. And he invited me to join Rotary. But the challenge I had was that I lived in Ndola, but worked in Kitwe, because the regional office was in Kitwe. So every morning I'd wake up and drive to Kitwe. And the Kitwe clubs used to meet in the evening, so I couldn't attend meetings there, because in the evening I was driving back to Ndola to go home. Then the Ndola clubs met at lunchtime. So I was never in Ndola at lunchtime. Or if I was, it was like for one day in a month or something like that. So when I moved to Lusaka, I moved back to Lusaka in 2001. He then asked me and said, he moved a little earlier than I did. Then when I came back, he said, listen, do you still want to join Rotary? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, we meet at Chrisma Hotel, and I can introduce you. So I came to Chrisma Hotel, I attended the meetings, and I was excited. And within a short period of time, I was inducted as a member of the Rotary Club of Nkwazi. One of the things that I benefited from was in 2002, 2003, I was head of operations for Barclays. And my boss then is the current Minister of Finance. She was MD for Barclays. She decided, she was elected, sorry, no, she didn't decide. She was elected chairperson of the Bankers Association. And what happened then was that in those days, these days now the Bankers Association has got its own secretariat, it's got its own office and building, it's got its own CEO. In those days, the chairperson, chairperson's bank, provided the secretariat for the Bankers Association. There was no secretariat. So because I was head of operations, then I became chairperson of the technical committee for the Bankers Association. I became chairperson of the Zambia Electronic Clearinghouse Management Committee at the time. I sat on the board of the Electronic Clearinghouse Committee as well. I sat on the National Payment Systems Committee. I sat on a few other committees because of that. And nothing prepares you, and those were the early days of the Institute of Directors, right? But nothing prepares you to chair meetings, you know, how to handle meetings, how to handle people. I was a very impatient guy. Banking in those days by its nature is a very stressful environment, very target-driven and very stressful. So I was a very impatient guy. Now I was dealing with people who I had no control over as the technical committee chair. And those days we used to meet on Friday afternoon from 14 or 14:30, and the meetings would drag until 16:30, 17 hours. Now, my experience in Rotary is that we meet for 1 hour. Strictly 1 hour, we have lots of fun, we push each other during that time, but we meet for 1 hour, and we conclude our business during that time. So I extended that experience to my chairing of these committees. Even in the bank, I was given some responsibilities. I was chair of the Operational Risk Committee, I was chair of this and so on. And what I tried to do is take the experience I gained from Rotary, because in Rotary you're dealing with CEOs, you're dealing with owners of business, you're dealing with all sorts of people, diverse, different races, different cultures, different personalities. And all of them are senior people in the institutions or businesses, wherever they come from. But the trick is it's voluntary. In the office environment, if somebody comes late for a meeting, you can close the door and the next thing is you're disciplining that person. In Rotary, you just find them with a smile. And you have to motivate them to come for the next meeting, even though you've given them a hefty fine this meeting, you have to motivate them to come for the next meeting. So the experience I gained from Rotary was largely around patience and how to handle people. And I took that experience into my professional environment. But the contrast is also true. I also took the experience of my work environment, the training I received in Barclays and so on throughout the years, and also that helped me with the kind of discipline that Rotary requires in managing your time, managing resources, the stewardship that you need to implement and so on in Rotary. So yes, I benefited from Rotary. I took some learnings and implemented them in my work environment, but I also did the same from my professional environment and put in practice in Rotary. And that helped me as well. Because in Rotary, I was elected secretary of my Rotary Club, I was elected treasurer, and then I was elected president. I served as president in 2007, 2008. Then after that, I became an assistant governor for 2 years, the 2 years after that. So that's why some people call me PAG, which is Past Assistant Governor. That's the last senior title I had. Or PP, which is Past President. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. But currently my role is Projects Director. Past presidents, like Precious, like Onechi, because of the stress of that 12 months as president, tend to take a backseat the following year. Okay? Our president-elect is sitting here, Uganda, and he's preparing to take over as president next year. But after his 12 months, I can assure you he's going to say, you know what, I'm taking 1 month leave or 2 months leave or something, I'm just chilling, you know? That tends to happen because it's not work. Okay, so you're not going to be fired for missing a meeting or for not achieving this goal or that kind of thing. But it's a voluntary environment, and all of us join Rotary for different reasons. If you join for the wrong reasons, it's likely you leave. Okay, some of us joined, like I said, because I wanted to give back to the community, and I wanted to find a structured way of doing it to make sure that whatever money I give goes to the intended beneficiaries every single way. Okay? And Rotary is one way of making sure that that happens. In my latter years, I became a Paul Harris Fellow. I'm sure that past President Helen talked about Paul Harris Fellowship last week. I hope. She did? She did? Okay.
Women in Rotary.
She talked about women in Rotary, but she's a Paul Harris Fellow. She should have talked about Paul Harris Fellowship. I'm a Paul Harris Fellow. A Paul Harris Fellow is someone who has given, is the recognition given to someone who has donated at least $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation. And I'll talk about the Rotary Foundation in a minute. Now in my case, the Paul Harris Fellowship is, the recognition is by way of this badge, okay? For those of you who are prospective Rotarians, you'll notice that this does not have the Rotary wheel, but it's got a face. And that face is the face of Paul Harris, who is the actual founder of Rotary. So anyone who has given $1,000 or more is given a pin like this one. Now my pin has got 2 sapphires. So it's a pin, and then it's got 2 blue sapphires. So that means every sapphire is $1,000. So every additional $1,000 you give, you get a pin with an additional sapphire. So I've got a pin, that's $1,000. Then 2 sapphires, that's $2,000. However, I didn't give $2,000 to Rotary. 2 other clubs recognized the work that our club has done in partnership with them, and because I'm the project's chair, they felt my contribution should be recognized, and they gave $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation and decided to recognize me for the service. So the additional $2,000 was not given by me in person, it was just a recognition that was awarded to me. So that's a bit about me. No questions, huh?
Yeah.
Now I'll talk about Rotary projects. There are largely 3 ways in which you can apply for, you can do projects in Rotary. The first one is what we call a global grant. As a Rotary club, you can apply for money from the Rotary Foundation. And if you meet the objectives or the guidelines, if you comply with the guidelines, you meet the objectives of the global grant, then you'll be given the money. Then secondly is through a district grant, what we call a district grant. The global grant requirements, I'll go through some of them, very high level, are quite stringent. One of the reasons why Rotary is one of the leading, or if not the leading, so I know my friend from the table is here, we say we're the leading service club, is because of the stewardship of funds. Every single coin that we collect goes to projects. We don't draw allowances from there. We don't draw anything. Whatever we do is we give freely. But the money that Rotary gives us is spent on the project, and it goes towards the beneficiaries. Okay. So the requirements for the global grant are quite stringent. There's also a district grant which you can get. The district grant, the requirements are less stringent, but the district must meet and decide to pick on a particular project from amongst several projects that the clubs in that district will present. Okay. I hope you're familiar with the district in Rotary.
Yes.
Yes, okay. You are. I hope everybody else is okay. That's good. Then the third way is just as a club, you can decide yourselves that you want to support UTH and buy paint and paint it. And you do a fundraiser yourselves and you decide to raise the money, and all that money now goes to buy paint, and you decide to paint a ward there and so on. And you can do that on your own as the Rotary Club of Lusaka East without having to go to the district for money or without having to go to Rotary Foundation for money. So those are largely the three ways in which you can get a grant. Rotary has scholarships as well, peace scholarships, water and sanitation scholarships, and so on. The good thing about Rotary, I'm not going to go into detail about the scholarships, but the good thing about Rotary is that everything, we're not a secret society, so we don't have a secret handshake, we don't have a secret wink, or secret clothes or something that identify you with, differently from someone else. All this information I'm telling you is on the Rotary website. You can go in, even if you're not a member, you can go in and you can get all this information on Rotary grants, on what Rotary is, what clubs are operating from where they meet, what happens, what's happening in Rotary, and so on. It's all there. And it's all free on the Rotary website. www.rotary.org, my Rotary. So now I'm going to go into a bit of detail on the global grants, which is the main thing. Some of the service clubs that are around, that operate in Zambia, I think raise their own money to implement projects. Whilst we have a foundation, which was formed now over 100 years ago. People put in money, and that money there's a permanent fund. What we get out of that fund is largely the interest. The fund itself continues lifelong. We get what is interest. So you can apply to the Rotary Foundation for a grant, but that grant must meet certain guidelines. For the global grant requirement, and we have, for Rotary Club of Nkwazi currently, we had 3 global grants that we were running. And they're quite time consuming. They are very fulfilling if you are into service, but they're also quite time consuming. Your project must have a long-term sustainable impact. Sustainability in Rotary now is a big thing. Those days, in the old days, you could apply for funds, start a project, and nobody's going to ask you about what's going to happen after the Rotary money dries up. Nobody's going to ask you what's going to happen after the Rotarians who have been visiting that project and doing something about it leave. But now, sustainability is a big thing. So you must be able to demonstrate long-term sustainability for your project. What's going to happen after the project funds have dried up, after the Rotarians have pulled out, after you've done your last report to the Rotary Foundation? What's going to happen? You must have a long-term sustainability goal. Then the world has got a lot of problems. So what Rotary Foundation has done is, rather than have all these 1.2 million Rotarians try and tackle all the problems that the world has, there are focus areas that the Rotary Foundation has come up with, and there are 6. So any global grant application must qualify or sit within these 6 focus areas. Let me just repeat those. The 6 focus areas that Rotary Foundation has come up with is promoting peace, world peace and understanding. You may know that the Rotary International is one of the only service organizations that has a permanent seat at the UN. So there's a permanent representative to the United Nations from Rotary International. They were there when the League of Nations was formed, so it's that old. Then the second one is fighting disease or disease prevention. The third one is providing clean water and sanitation. The fourth one is saving mothers and children, maternal and child health. And then the fifth one is supporting education, literacy. Then the last one is growing local economies. For our club as Rotary Club of Nkwazi, the board decided that we should focus on three of these focus areas, and these are providing clean water, saving mothers and children, and supporting education. But it doesn't mean that if we have a project outside these three that fits into these other, the whole six, that we can't do it. Okay, and I'll give an example of one that we've done. But we decided as a board and as a club that we'll focus on these three areas. So, for a global grant application, it must fit within one of these six focus areas. The minimum investment required, the minimum amount for this project, for a global grant application, is $30,000. The maximum is $200,000. So you can't, if it's $15,000, if it's a $15,000 project, maybe you opt for a district grant, or maybe your club can raise that kind of money if it's rich. But for a global grant, it's $30,000 up to $200,000. What the World Fund does, which is the Rotary Foundation money, is that they'll match, excuse me, they'll match your grant application. So there's what we call district designated funds. So the clubs in a particular district will put up money at a district level, and that money will go into a fund called district designated fund. If a club decides to draw money from that district designated fund, as they apply for a grant from the global grant, from the global fund, a global grant, sorry, then the Rotary Foundation will match that dollar for dollar, 100%. So if you get $1,000 from the district designated fund, the Rotary Foundation will give you $1,000. If the club raises money itself and puts it up for a project, or it gets money from a third party. So if Airtel, for example, agrees to donate money to a project, the Rotary Foundation will match it at 50 cents to $1. They only give 100% if it's a district designated fund. Anything else is 50 cents to $1. Okay? That's how the application is done. The project itself must address a community need. As of July 1 this year, it's become a requirement that you must do what is known as a community needs assessment. I'll give an example of why it's important. Kind of digressing a bit from Rotary, but these are real life examples. Some years ago, some friends of mine told me they'd gone to the Eastern Province for a project visit. And whilst they were sitting, doing a project evaluation in a rural setting, so it's a village environment, they realized that this village that they were sitting in had no toilets. When they looked around, they could see where the houses were and so on, but there were no toilets. So they were there for a different project. But then they thought, well, there are no toilets here. You know what, we can raise money and build a toilet for these people. So they raised money without consulting the owners of the village. They raised money and decided to construct an ablution block. Girls' toilet, men's toilet, a small washroom and so on. Then 6 months later, they went back to do an evaluation. And when they got there, they found that the toilet was clean, spotless. It had not been used for 6 months. And but these guys, there's no toilet here, so how come they haven't used this toilet? So as they were discussing, they called one of the village elders, and they were questioning him, and then the village elder says, listen, all this thing is giving me a tummy, I need to go and use the toilet. And I thought, okay, let's see what happens here. So the guy goes off and misses the toilet, the ablution block, goes off into the bush. And guess what? All the pigs follow. All the pigs follow this man. I know it's a bit gross. Yeah, but the pigs followed.
Yeah, and explanation, yeah.
You don't get it. So they had a way of getting rid of their waste, and that was by using the pigs.
And they ate the pigs later on.
Very tasty.
Bacon chops.
Very tasty. Yeah. You probably ate some, you didn't know.
Telling me that
They are their own way. They are their own cycle of managing their waste.
It's waste management program.
so you're telling me someone in this village had a brainwave and said, the best way to get rid of our waste, let's get the pigs to eat our poop.
Yeah, the same way you mow your grass. You get the goats to
Do your grass.
The goats eat the grass.
I don't think it happened
Quite like
quite
that.
like that.
Village is such a strange place. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. But that's what happened. So they didn't actually need the ablution block. That's the point I'm trying to make. Another example is when I was with Barclays, I visited Mansa. And I met an American Peace Corps volunteer. And this guy, you're familiar with American Peace Corps volunteers, huh?
Yes.
They specialize in something. And they'll come here, they'll learn the language of the particular village. They go into villages. They'll learn the language of the particular village they're supposed to go into. And then they'll go in and help out in the village. So I met this guy at some eating place in Mansa. And he was rather despondent. So we got to talking, and he was asking what I was doing, and I told him, and then I asked him, what are you doing? So he told me, you know what, I'm actually thinking about what to do here, because I'm a water and sanitation expert. And I came into Zambia, there's a village I was assigned to, I know the language, my Bemba is bad, his Bemba was better than mine. So he went into this village, and his objective was to teach these villagers how to build toilets in relation to boreholes or wells. So the well must be upstream, the toilet must be downstream, so that the water does not mix. Okay, simple. And that's what he got to. He was introduced to the village headman, and he went there and he told them, I'm from America, my name is so-and-so in Denver. I'm a water and sanitation expert. The way you've done your toilets here, they're at the same level. The toilet water is mixing with the well, and it's bad for you. You get typhoid, you get cholera, and so on and so on. He was talking to a 90-year-old headman. Okay, so this 90-year-old headman listened to him. Then at the end of his talk, he then tells him. So this guy concludes by saying that your arrangement is very poor. It exposes you to all these kind of diseases. So what I want to do is build a well upstream and build the toilets downstream. So the headman tells him, I'm 90 years old, and I was born here, and I've lived here all my life, and I've drank this same water.
And I've never had
I've never had what you're telling me. Yeah. So a needs assessment, that's the point I'm trying to make, is very important for this project. And for Rotary now, it's a requirement. You cannot apply for a global grant unless you have a needs assessment. Okay. Then you need to make the application through Rotary. It makes life easy. So you just go on the Rotary website, go to Rotary Grants Action. My action, my grants, and then you go to apply for a global grant, and then you start filling out a form. It's been made very simple for Rotarians. It's not complex, it's not difficult. Okay. Then you must partner with an international club. So you must find the club. What tends to happen, and this is the reality, is that the Southern Hemisphere clubs are quite poor. The Northern Hemisphere clubs are quite rich. Okay. This is the reality. The fundraising in the Southern Hemisphere is, we will say what, bowling or paintball. Yeah. We spend, we raise 20,000 kwacha, but we spend 15,000 kwacha organizing it.
Yeah.
So the net effect is what, 5,000 kwacha. Our friends in the Northern Hemisphere have been to one of these clubs, and they're saying, oh, we've got a club in Zambia, they want this, and you know, they need $10,000. And this guy, okay, I'll give you a check for $1,000. I'll give you a check for $2,000. By the time you're leaving, the money is there. You know, it's all there. They've all given you checks or cash or something, and it's done.
No capital.
Yeah, no, nothing like, no, we did a fundraiser. They do fundraisers. But that time when I was there, they just, literally just, you know, issued out checks. That's the kind of difference between Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. So find the Northern Hemisphere club. You can do it through the Rotary website, or you can do it through your club resources. There are many of us who travel outside the country for various trips. And this badge entitles you, as long as you're a member, it entitles you to go to attend a Rotary meeting at any club in the world. All you do is, if you're going to Machu Picchu or Kathmandu, you just go on my Rotary, find the club, find out what time they're meeting, and pitch up. And when you get there, start a discussion about projects. And you'll be interested to find that they actually have money, but they don't know where to spend it. And you've got projects, but you don't know where to get the money. So you find an international club. Then your club must qualify for global grants every year. And I'll explain the qualification. I'm being reminded of time. And then you need to measure the progress towards the outcome. So you need to have some monitoring and evaluation system. And the beauty with Rotary is that the monitoring and evaluation methods or examples are there on the Rotary website. So if you say your project fits in within maternal and child health, it will give you different measures, okay, which you can pick that are relevant to your kind of project. You don't have to start cracking your brain and thinking, so what kind of measure am I going to do? It's there. They're all there. The examples are all there. So it's not that difficult to do these project applications. Then, of course, yeah, you must do the application. You develop the plan, and whatever project reporting requirements must always be up to date. Some projects last for more than a year. So after 12 months, you must produce a report. At the end of, if it's a 2-year project, at the end of 2 years, you must complete your report. In terms of the club qualification, very quickly, it's very basic. Every year, the district arranges what we call grant seminars. So the committee members who are involved in that project must attend the grant seminar. For us as a district, we've decided that the qualification must include a president, president-elect, the Rotary Foundation chair, and I think it's the secretary and treasurer. One of those two. But at least 4 members. And at the end of the grant seminar, you sign an MOU, which basically says that your club is going to abide by whatever regulations have been set. And you sign it there because it means that you've attended the seminar, and your club agrees, because all your signatories are there. And then that is submitted to the district grants chair. And then also you must give some money to the Rotary Foundation. You can't just be taking. There's what we call every Rotarian every year. We are requested to provide $100 to the Rotary Foundation. Some clubs do it, others don't. But as a member of any Rotary club, it's your obligation to at least give $100. It's 1,000 kwacha over a 12-month period. You should be able to give that kind of money. Okay, so that basically is are the requirements for a global grant application. I've got 5 minutes. Huh? 3 minutes. Okay. Okay. I'll just briefly mention the kind of projects that we're involved in at a very high level. The first global grant that I'll just touch on is what we call our Gift of Life. We partnered with a club in India to provide life-saving heart operations on children. This fits under one of the key focus areas, which is prevention of saving mothers and children. So we flew 20 kids to India. We got a grant for $124,000. Our contribution was $1,000. We flew 20 kids to India for heart-saving life operations. Life-saving heart operations, sorry. Here we identified them, we partnered with UTH. So we flew in doctors from the US. They came, did an assessment. There were 500 children with congenital heart disease, as they call it. It's a hole in the heart. And for some reason, the hole in the heart here in Zambia is almost like a death sentence. If it's not dealt with when you're still young, before you are 12, 11 or 12, somewhere there, then you die before you get to 21 or something like that. That was the statistic that was given. So you must deal with it. But those operations cannot be done in Zambia, unfortunately. So they just give you medicine and treat you and so on. Some of the conditions are complex. What we had to do in the screening is find children who whose problem could be dealt with in India, and when they came back to Zambia, there would be very little follow-up required. So we flew 20 children to India, we had them operated on, came back to Zambia, and they're all fine. This happened in 2016. We had another round of children that we flew to India this year in February, but this time we only flew 7 kids there, and with their parents, and they were all operated on, and they all came back, and they're all okay. So that's one example of a global grant. Very quickly, again, another example of a global grant that's currently running is what we call the Schools Health Project. We did a pilot in 2015 in Ngombe Township. Our children spend more time in school currently than with us at home. So if they have an illness or they're sick, it's the teachers who are able to tell that there's a problem. So what we did through this project is we trained teachers to provide first-line health care and support to these kids. And we did it with what we call a cooperating partner. And a cooperating partner can be important for you in a global grant, because all of us are working. Who was saying that I wanted to come, but my work schedule does not allow me, and so on? Exactly. Yeah. So a cooperating partner can help you to implement a project, and they become important. So we have done this through a cooperating partner. They've taken up the training, they've taken up the management of the project, and so on. We then, with a global grant, the money has to be handled by Rotarians. It can never be handled by non-Rotarians. That's very important. Okay, because if money goes missing, it's your club that has to pay back that money. So the global grant, the money must be handled by Rotarians. So we partnered with this cooperating partner. They trained some teachers in Ngombe to be school health workers, providing first-line health care to children at community schools and government school. And then they also partnered with the local health center to provide what we call a fast-track system. So if a child was sick at the school, the teacher quickly referred the child to the clinic, and we know that our healthcare systems have got challenges. So if you go to a health center now, you'll find that you are in a queue. You can take anything from 1 to 2 to 3 hours, or even 4 hours, waiting to be attended to. So this fast-track system enables the child at a participating school to be attended to with a very quick turnaround, within an hour, okay? And then they go back to school. And then every month, that participating school meets with the health center. The patients that are referred from the school to the health center or attended to by the health center are then reviewed. The health center has got the records of all the participating schools and all the patients, and they then review the patient's progress with all the schools, at least once a month. And this has helped with absenteeisms. Parents are very happy because if a child is sick now, in most homes, especially with this economy now with fuel and 16 budget, yeah, you find the mother and the father are working. So if a child is sick, ordinarily then one of the parents has to take time off from work. But now what they do is they send the child to school. And the child goes to school, the teacher is the one who sends him to the health center, attended to, short time, turned around, gone back to school. That's the way it works. But the other things, we take a baseline survey, we check the eyes, we check the BP, we check the weight, we check the, we do a health check if you like. We also do things like deworming, vitamin A, and so on at some point. So that's the school health program. And these are examples of a global grant. We also have a district grant where we partnered with some Canadian clubs to build a classroom block, 2 classrooms in Chinsanshi, which is in Chieftainess Mungule's area. It's a district grant because we didn't apply for money from the Rotary Foundation. We got about $30,000 to build 2 classrooms. We kitted out the classrooms, we put in desks, and we bought exercise books for the pupils. We also bought a teacher's table and so on for those classrooms. That one, the requirements and the accountability is less stringent than global grants. So there are many others, but I think I'll end here.